Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today, we're going to be ranking all of the Overflod vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online in tier list form. Now, if you guys have never seen one of my ranking videos or my tier list videos before, there is something that you must know. This list is 100% factual and cannot be argued with. If you cannot agree to these terms and conditions, you should exit off of the video immediately. However, if you choose to accept these terms and conditions, we can get into it. So we're going to go ahead and start off with F tier. To start off the tier list, we of course have the Overflod Tyrant coming in at F tier. This thing is just weird. It costs just over $2.5 million, and for that price you get one of the most abhorrently sized vehicles in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. This thing is absolutely massive, and I don't know what happened. I'm not sure if the guy who made this was huffing glue or something a little more potent, but whatever he was doing was not to scale. How is this the size of this vehicle? I mean, if you look at how big the seats are and where the driver sits and everything, why is literally everything so massive? It's crazy that this car is as big as it is. The Overflod Tyrant is literally bigger than a Gallivanter Baller, which is pretty nuts considering that this is a full-size SUV and the Overflod Tyrant is a supercar. Why? Why is it so mad? Like, it's a good 2 feet longer than the Gallivanter Baller. Like, if it was a little bit, it's like, you know, okay. This thing's massive, and the roofline is literally up to where the Gallivanter Baller's doors go up to. It's crazy. Now, for the $2.5 million that this thing costs you, you get pretty bad performance. The Overflod Tyrant, I'm not going to say it's a horrible car to drive. It's actually got fairly decent handling, and it's okay. I mean, it's you know, it's quick enough if I was, you know, if I wanted to go slow. But the Overflod Tyrant, I mean, it's just kind of an underwhelmingly huge car. Like, it's just not that good. And for $2.5 million, you can just do better. So that's it for the Overflod Tyrant, and that's it for F tier. It's time to move on to C tier. Next up, to start off C tier, we of course have the Overflod Entity XXR. Now the XXR goes for $2.3 million, making it sort of a cheaper car on this list. It's only, you know, $2.3 million, which is, you know, better than 2.5, I guess. And it's just a shame, because this car was added with the After Hours DLC, meaning it has engine resistance. If you don't know what engine resistance is, it basically makes cars accelerate very inconsistently and very slowly. Now, the XXR is actually one of my favorite Overflod cars, and if this thing literally just didn't have engine resistance, it would have got a much, much better ranking. I have heard that this car without engine resistance would have actually been at the top of the supercars category, but for some reason Rockstar added it, more than likely probably to keep the FPS okay on the last generation consoles. If I had to guess, at least that's probably why they would have done it, but I mean, they've got faster cars since, so like, I don't know. But the XXR, one of my favorite Overflod vehicles, like I mentioned. I mean, I absolutely love this car. It's just the performance is so bad. Like, it's not good. The handling is actually okay on, oh my god, good night. Now, the handling is actually pretty good on this vehicle. The customization is even pretty good as well. But the XXR is just underwhelming, and for $2.3 million, you can find a lot of cars that will outperform this thing for just a fraction of the price, and they probably will have more customization as well. So unfortunately, the XXR is the car to start off C tier. However, we do have one more vehicle in C tier that we're going to go over right now. Next up, to cap off C tier, we of course have the Overflod Xeno. Now, the Overflod Xeno is actually a car that has grown on me a lot. I was actually really harsh on this thing, and I know I've put it in C tier, but it is at the top of C tier, so it's almost in B tier, so don't bash me too hard, guys. The Overflod Xeno, I mean, it maybe could have slipped into B tier, but there is one grueling reason why this thing just cannot make it. Now, the Xeno goes for $2.8 million, making it the most expensive car on this entire list by far, by about $300,000, which is, it's a fair margin, I would say. Now, the Xeno actually has a lot of pretty good customization. However, the performance for $2.8 million is maybe another story. This thing is not even close to the top 10 fastest supercars in Grand Theft Auto Online. It's somewhere between 10 and 25, which is not exactly great for $2.8 million. This is one of the most expensive supercars in the entire game, and for that you get performance that's, well, just not good. Now, like I said, it does have good customization, but unfortunately, one customization option in particular will absolutely ruin the enjoyability of this car entirely. That option is, of course, the mirrors. So, I have the stock mirrors on this car right now. Let me go ahead and equip a custom set of mirrors. So, I've gone ahead and equipped the carbon mirrors. Now, this is where the fun begins. So, as you guys can see, I'll just be driving, and you'll start to notice some things about the Xeno. So once you equip the custom mirrors on the Xeno, the car for some reason becomes very, very bouncy, and every bump in the road could be your last. As you guys can see, the Xeno, what? Like, what? What possesses this car to, like, I don't understand what Rockstar did, but as you guys can see, once you equip custom mirrors on the Xeno, life might as well be over, because it's like, this thing becomes completely undrivable. Not exactly the most huge issue, but I mean, the option for, okay, yeah. The option for custom mirrors is there, so you would hope that if you equipped, say, the carbon mirrors like I've got on the car to make the car, you know, look better or whatever you want to do, you'd hope that it wouldn't cause your car to be completely undrivable. And no, yes, I know this is kind of a small thing to complain about. I mean, like, it's you can't drive it. So you get a $2.8 million car that you can't change the mirrors on, because if you do, the car will have a complete schizophrenic panic attack and breakdown, which is obviously, I mean, we love that. So overall, the Xeno for $2.8 million is just, I don't know. It's a good car, don't get me wrong, but for the love of God, if you do buy this thing, never change the mirrors, because you'll just kill yourself. That's, like, what is even, okay, we're moving on. That is it for C tier, on to B tier. For B tier, we have the Overflod Autark coming in at $2 million. Now, this thing is actually quite a performance bargain as far as the Overflod cars go. At just under $2 million, actually, the Autark is actually just outside of the top 10 fastest supercars around a track in Grand Theft Auto Online. So that is pretty cool. Now, I personally do really like the Autark. I think that this car is super, super sick. It has tons of downforce. It has absolutely fantastic handling. It's got great acceleration, and it's got an okay top speed, albeit it is not the best. The Autark is interesting because it's kind of a hybrid vehicle. Like, it's almost like a track exclusive vehicle, but obviously it's GTA, so you can drive it on the street, of course. Making it kind of interesting because we don't really get too many of these cars that are mostly made to be like a track toy, like an Aerial Atom, for example. We don't get many of these in GTA Online, so for Overflod to have one is actually pretty cool. Overall, the Autark is a performance bargain on this list. I mean, it's probably the best performing vehicle on the entire list, and for arguably the best price. The Autark looks absolutely sick when you customize it as well. It's got so many customization options, it's actually pretty crazy, and it's super, super low to the ground, as you guys can see by the skirt clipping in and out of the ground. The Autark is definitely deserving of A tier, and because there's so few Overflod cars, I kind of had to put this thing in A tier. If there were more cars, I probably would have at least bumped it up to B tier, maybe even S tier. That's how good the Autark is. This thing is awesome, and I would definitely highly recommend it. Doesn't really understeer, doesn't really oversteer. It's just got really good downforce and really good traction all around. So that's pretty much it for B tier and the Autark. Let's move on to A tier. Next up, to start off A tier, we have the Overflod Immorgan. Now, this thing comes in at $2.2 million, and it's a very, very good car. When it comes to customization options, the Overflod Immorgan actually has quite a few of them. As you guys can see, there's all kinds of things that are done to this vehicle, which is pretty nuts. Now, a really interesting thing about the Immorgan is it is actually considered an EV in Grand Theft Auto Online. And as you guys can see, it does have an exhaust. The interesting thing is this thing is actually an electric vehicle, but it also uses methanol, which is interesting. And to my knowledge, it is the only car in Grand Theft Auto Online that does that. So, obviously, because it is electric, or part electric I should say, it has absolutely awesome acceleration. This thing is super, super quick in a straight line, and the handling is also pretty decent as well. This thing is within the sports category in Grand Theft Auto Online, and previously it was within the top 10 fastest sports cars, and now because of the contract DLC, it has just gone out of the top 10 because of some of the House HSW vehicles on the expanded and enhanced edition. Now, if you're still playing on last generation consoles or PC, the Morgan is actually still within the top 10 fastest sports cars, but if you're on the expanded and enhanced edition, it is not. So, sorry, I know that's confusing. I wish we were all first-class citizens, but unfortunately some of us are second. I actually really don't like the Overflod and Morgan, especially looks-wise. I don't think that it's a very good-looking car. However, I absolutely respect its performance capabilities. This thing is awesome to drive, even though it's maybe not that awesome to look at. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much it for the Overflod and Morgan in A tier. It's time to move on to the final vehicle, which is, of course, in S tier. And of course, the vehicle in S tier is the OG Overflod Entity XF. Now the XF goes for $795,000, making it by far the cheapest car on this list, and of course it's an S tier. You can call this personal preference, and it absolutely is. But the Entity XF truly is one of the greatest supercars in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now, in the early days of Grand Theft Auto Online, which many of you probably were not around for, the Overflod Entity XF was absolutely dominant in the supercars category. Everybody always thought that the Adder was the fastest supercar because it cost $1 million, and by the way, the Adder is actually my favorite car. But as people found out, the Entity XF was actually the quickest supercar around a track in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now, I do believe that the Adder actually has a higher top speed than the Entity XF, but as far as handling and performance goes in corners, the Entity XF is a little bit better, and a lot of it is to do with the spoiler option that is on the back of this thing. Now, for a 2013 car, the customization on the Entity XF was, well, pretty revolutionary. I think it has a whole 3, maybe 4 customization options on it, which is absolutely insane. In 2013, I can tell you that the Entity XF truly was the car. It was the car for racing. It was the car to have in online before money glitches, before all of this other stuff. If you had an Entity XF and you saw somebody with an Entity XF, you would always respect them. And even to this day, anytime that I ever see somebody driving an XF, which is never, if I ever do see somebody driving one, they will absolutely have my respect and I will give them props. The Entity XF truly is a goated supercar in Grand Theft Auto Online. It was the best supercar in the game at one time, and it is absolutely deserving of the #1 spot in S tier, in my opinion. So there you have it, guys. That has been the ultimate Overflod vehicle tier list in Grand Theft Auto Online. If you guys enjoyed this video, a like is of course appreciated, if not dislike of course. Subscribe if you guys are new. Let me know in the comments down below what other vehicle manufacturers you'd like to see me cover in Grand Theft Auto Online, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.